Welcome to another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I'm the founder of Teach the Geek. It's an online platform for science and engineering professionals. I'm also founder of the online public speaking course, Teach the Geek to Speak. You can learn more about it at teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Today, my guest is Britt Smith. He embarked on a civil engineering career that eventually led to him becoming president-elect of the National Society of Professional Engineers. I'm really curious to learn more about his interest in where his interest in engineering came from, whether the working world was what he thought it would be, and what was the motivation to go into NSPE or NSPE leadership. Welcome to Teach the Geek interviews, Britt.
Thanks, Neil. Appreciate it. Looking forward to our conversation.
Wonderful. So from the bit of research I did on you, obviously you work as a civil engineer, so you likely have some sort of interest in civil engineering, or else you wouldn't be doing it. So where did the interest in civil engineering come from?
Well, I kind of took a strange path to my engineering career. I actually studied aerospace engineering when I was in college, and certainly was fascinated with it. Was expecting to kind of take a military career, and actually had the opportunity to go to flight school with the Army and fly helicopters. But I took a summer job before I graduated with a civil engineering firm as a third person on a survey crew, and I just was fascinated by the work, and I truly loved it. And so I ended up convincing that boss to hire me, and that's where it all started once I graduated. And I've never looked back, and I absolutely just love the work. I love being part of the community. The civil engineers, in my field, I've worked mainly in municipal engineering, so you work for a community, and in my case, the community that I live in, and I just love it.
Oh, okay, yeah, I've had other civil engineers on the podcast before, and I never realized how versatile, or I guess varied, civil engineering was. Like, whenever I thought of civil engineers, I thought those are the people that build bridges, but you all do a lot more than just build bridges. So just based on the work that you've done so far in your career, what kind of work have you done as a civil engineer?
Well, my work has been, like I said, mainly geared toward municipalities. If a municipality has it, we've worked on it. It might be a water system, it might be a sewer system, a stormwater system, roads, bridges, and then land development, from site plans for everything from a new Walmart down to a residential development of a new subdivision. That's where I've spent most of my time. I've done a couple of bridges early in my career, figured out that I didn't want to be a structural engineer, so I stay away from bridges. But and now I've moved into the operations side, where right now I'm the operations division director for our public works department, which most people would call a deputy public works director. And my primary responsibilities are, I'm in charge of our street department, with our annual maintenance program for our streets. I'm in charge of our airport, which is really a lot of fun given my aviation background. I'm also in charge of our central maintenance division, that are our mechanics that do the work on our fleet and maintain our fleet, which has been a lot of fun as well. And then finally, I'm in charge of a parking division, and I have people that write parking tickets that work for me. They didn't have many classes in college about parking tickets, and so maybe we ought to add that to the curriculum. But I don't recommend people head that way. It's amazing how upset people can get over a parking ticket.
Oh, no question. I get a parking ticket that ruins my day. Wow, what a varied job. Like you from airports to parking. You wouldn't think they either have anything to do with each other, but there you are overseeing all of it. Britt, you said you started off in aerospace, and now you do more, municipal work which falls under more civil engineering. But is it, I guess, to make that leap or that jump from aerospace to civil, was that difficult to do? Did you have to change majors, or you just an aerospace engineer who works in civil engineering?
I'm an aerospace. My degree is aerospace engineering. That's where I graduated in. Like I said, it's the principles are very the same. I mean, aerospace, we do a lot of fluids, but it's called aerodynamics. Fluids is whether it's an air or it's a liquid, it's the same, except for the formulas get a lot easier when we don't have to worry about the compressibility effect, incompressibility. So that's but it was a tough transition, and I had to have a company that was willing to invest that kind of time in me to explain to me that we talk about, instead of pressure as PCI, we talk about head pressure in civil engineering. It's still pressure, it's just a different way of measuring it. And so you have to get used to the different terminologies. You have to do a lot of studying, a lot of reading, and was able to do that. And I was fortunate enough that, I'm registered as a professional engineer, and I took the civil engineering exam for the professional engineering exam to get that registration. And I've loved my career ever since. I wouldn't change a thing, except for maybe going back and maybe studying civil engineering to begin with.
Right. And learning a bit more about parking tickets. It's interesting. Oh, you mentioned getting your professional engineer license, and I've also interviewed some people that have their professional engineer license, and I understand that it's very prevalent in civil engineering to get that license, but not so much so in perhaps other engineering disciplines. I guess, what was the motivation for you getting your professional engineer license?
Well, really, as a civil engineer, if you don't get your PE, your professional engineering license, you're not going to go very far in your career. That's just the reality. In many other disciplines, it's the same thing. So, if you're working in industry, the professional engineering license may not seem that important to you. But I would recommend it even in those situations. I would recommend every engineer get registered as a professional engineer for a lot of different reasons, but not the least of which, when you're working in industry, when you're working for some company, you're exempt from most engineering laws in the state. But if you ever want to think about owning your own firm and practicing engineering, you've got to be a registered professional engineer to do that work in your own entity. So it's I've never met somebody who regretted getting their professional engineering registration, but I've met a lot of folks that wish they had done it. So ask people to consider that as they start their career.
Got it. Gotcha. So when it comes to getting your professional engineer license, what do you have to do to get it?
Well, it's the registration laws are pretty similar state by state, but there are variations. But in general, whenever you're in college or right after college, you take the FE exam, the Fundamentals of Engineering. That's an exam that basically, it's an all-day test that tests the breadth of the breadth of your knowledge. It's got a lot of different questions in engineering in a lot of different areas. Then you typically would spend 4 years working in whatever chosen field you're at, and then you take what's called the professional engineering exam. And in that exam, again, it's testing the depth of your knowledge. It's much more specific to the work that you've been doing. So now those things have been decoupled a little bit. Sometimes you can take the PE exam a little earlier than your 4 years of experience. But that's the basic process. And once you've got that, and then there's some ethics is a big part of those tests as well. Engineering ethics and understanding our ethical obligation to our clients, but more importantly to the public, because we have engineers. I mean, if you think about it, the average engineer that's doing work probably holds more people's lives in that person's hands than any doctor can see in a lifetime. Imagine the guy that designed that bridge, or the man or woman who designed a bridge. How many people drive over that bridge in its lifetime, which might be 50 years? The person working in industry, they're building some widget that's going to be mass produced and sent to maybe all over the world. How many people are using that? And the safety of those people is within the purview of that engineer. It's an awesome responsibility. And sometimes I don't think we as engineers think about it that way. We just think about it as our job, our profession, our love. But it's an awesome responsibility that we have to consider each and every day.
Yeah, I fully agree with you, especially if you're the person building that bridge and it comes down, then yeah, you damn well better think about the responsibility you have when you put a bridge up. You're right. You know, millions of people may drive over that bridge every day. So yeah, absolutely.
You know, in my case, I work for the community that I live in. The people that drive the roads that I'm responsible for, they're my friends and my neighbors. So and my family. So those are real issues that and that's the great thing about engineering, I think. We affect people's lives, and that's awesome.
Yeah, yeah. I think you're right. I think a lot of engineers don't really think of it that way, and I think in a lot of cases, that's why perhaps some people don't even come into engineering in the first place. They want to work in something where they think that the work that they're doing has some sort of effect on humanity. And perhaps they don't think that engineering is that type of profession, but just based on the examples you've given, that it very well can be. It's just we need to do a better job.
If you want to change the world, be an engineer. That's who's going to change the world.
Yeah, I think you're right around that one. So when you become a PE, let's say you're living in one state, you want to move to another state. Do you have to do something so that you can be a PE in that state, or is it just you can just move from state to state? Doesn't matter.
Again, it varies specifically to which state you're going to, but in general, you apply for what's called reciprocity. So if one state will recognize the registration in another state, as long as each state believes that those two are equal. And for the most part, that applies across the country. There are some nuances, in some specific areas. California's got some special requirements in relation to earthquakes. So structural engineers may have some issues with getting reciprocity but for the most part, it's an application to that state registration board, and within a period of time, they have what's called model law engineers. There is an organization called NCEES, the National Council of Engineering Examiners. I always mess up what it stands for. It's NCEES. If your state, your registration law in the state that you live in, that you got registered in, generally follows the model law of that organization, their state law has adopted the same rules, you can get registration in just about any state in the country very easily.
Gotcha. I also mentioned in the intro that you're part of the NSPE leadership. What was the motivation for you to go down that path?
Well, it's kind of strange. NSPE has affiliate organizations in every state. In each of those states, most of them have chapters. And we have a local chapter here in my city, Jefferson City, Missouri. Group of guys that got together monthly. I was asked to join that, and next thing I know, after joining it, I was asked to be the secretary treasurer, and then just started progressing. And I started increasing my network beyond this, Jefferson City. I started meeting engineers, practicing all over the state. Well, I got involved with the state leadership and started making, connections with other engineers across the country, which encouraged me to get involved at the national level. Never thought that I would be sitting here as the president-elect of NSPE. I'll be honest with you, I never thought that would be the case. But I got a call and asked, from a friend, one of my close friends that I've made from another part of the country, asking me to consider running, that they needed someone. And I was at a point in my career, but kids were out of the house, and it does take a lot of time. But talk with my wife, and it's an awesome opportunity. And this is my second year in the leadership. You start off as the vice president when you move to president-elect, and come this summer, I'll be the president. And it's been a blast. The people that I've met, we've done a lot of Zoom meetings. I might be on a Zoom meeting with folks on the East Coast, and in the afternoon, I'm in a Zoom meeting with somebody from Guam. It's a lot of fun, and you get to meet a lot of people from all over the country and all walks of life. We find out we've got all kinds of similarities, regardless of where we're from, where we're, what we're working on. We might be mechanicals, we might be electricals, we might be civils, or any number of other disciplines, but sometimes we're always facing the same thing. And that's been a lot of fun to work through.
So then once you become the president of NSPE in the summer, what are your priorities? What will your priorities be?
Well, what I think is the most important thing for all engineers is the protection of the public's health, safety, and welfare. That is our creed. That is essentially what we do. And one of the big things that NSPE does is public advocacy, working with not only our national legislators, but the state legislators to ensure that that as legislation is made, we are holding the public safety to be paramount. There's a lot of technologies out there, especially emergency technologies now, with autonomous vehicles, with other technologies as they're emerging. And we want to make sure that those, whenever they hit the public's hands, that they're safe. So advocacy is a huge part of what NSPE is about. The other thing that NSPE likes, wants to encourage is get more people in engineering. We need more engineers. We are not producing enough. And I'm not saying, I say we as the world, not necessarily we as the United States, but the same applies. So we want to get into the classrooms as early as we can and talk with a diverse culture of maybe the people that aren't necessarily looking at engineering because no one's told them, hey, you're good at math, maybe you ought to be an engineer. You don't just have to be good at math to be a good engineer. You have to be good at solving problems. That's what we're about, is problem solving. So we want to talk to those young ladies in elementary school and junior high and high school. We want to talk to those people of color that are in those same situations and convince them that engineering is a lot of fun and you can do this. It's not out of your reach.
Yeah, engineering, you got to have that interest and you got to be willing to do the work, because you do say, yeah, you don't have to be the best at math. When you're in that first year calculus class or first year differential equations class, you better be at least semi-decent.
Come on, Neil, you don't want to blow it for me already. But if that's the thing, we can teach good math. You can teach good math. So we don't need to lose people to the medical profession or to the accounting profession or to whatever profession, because they're convinced that they're not good in whatever that case may be. We need a diverse group of people working in engineering, and that's if we don't have that, imagine where innovation is going to go. How are we going to innovate? Innovation comes from engineering.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. So to be able to communicate that message of the importance of engineering and how people can see themselves in it, I think it'd be best, or it'd be very helpful to be able to communicate well with others. Is that something that you've always been good at? And if not, what did you do to get better at it?
Well, I was thinking, I figured this question was coming along, given that you're Teach the Geek. Public speaking I don't think it comes natural to anyone. But it is a skill, not unlike playing basketball, not unlike baseball, not unlike any, you pick it. It's something that has to be developed. Tom Brady is obviously a natural athlete. That doesn't mean he doesn't practice, though. All right. So for me, getting involved with the NSPE was one of the ways that I got to be a good public, I shouldn't say I'm a good public speaker. That's pretty, I like to think I'm fairly good at public speaking. But I did it through practice. And when I'm talking with, a senior member talking about why they should let You let a young engineer have some time off to be involved in whatever society it might be. It might be NSPE, it might be the Rotary, it might be, whatever civic organization that's out there. The reason that I think that it's good is it gives them an opportunity to hopefully make presentations in front of groups in a friendly environment. Whenever I'm in a room full of engineers and I'm talking about a project that I've done for the city and kind of giving them a 30-minute rundown, I'm practicing public speaking. And if I blow it, if I say something stupid, it's a no harm, no foul kind of thing. All right. But I get feedback from those engineers. It's in a safe room, if you will. But now if I've got a camera on me and I'm not practiced that, and I've got a camera on me and a news reporter is asking me a question and I say something boneheaded, now I've hurt my organization. So the more often you practice public speaking, the better you'll be at it. So stretch yourself, is my biggest advice, is stretch yourself. In fact, when I talk to school kids about engineering, I don't stress math. I stress communication, because you can be the smartest person and come up with the most innovative idea ever. But if you can't communicate that to someone, it'll never be produced in any way.
Yeah, I'd learned that. I'd learned that the hard way. And I think a lot of engineers have learned that too. You don't want to be that engineer that at your desk always mad that someone else's ideas are getting implemented. But how can yours get implemented? You don't talk to anybody.
We've got to recognize that you are in sales. I don't care who you are. You're a salesman. You have to be. You have to be a salesperson, because if, whatever you're doing, you've got to convince somebody else that you know what you're talking about and to trust you to do it your way. All right. And, that could be your kids. It could be your coworkers, or, it could be the little old lady you're helping cross the street. You've got to be able to present a persona of somebody of trust that people want to follow. And that's the salesman. That's what salesmen do. So when I was early in my career, I was working for an engineering company, and my boss wanted me to go sell, go to XYZ organization or to a city council meeting and sell. I tried to tell him that, no, that's not my job. That's your job. You go sell the job and bring it back to me, and I'll design it, and I'll sit here in my cube and I'll be all great. It'll be great. But it took, it took a little bit of pushing to get me out that door and get me talking to folks. And so, accept that as early as you can in your career and take every opportunity you can to speak in front of a group.
Yeah, no question. I fully agree. When it comes to the presentations that you do, Britt, do you have a process for putting them together? And if so, what is it?
That's a good question, Neil. I'm not a big note taker. I do like to work from PowerPoint. I like to work from slides, but I like to have just enough information on those slides to remind me of what I want to say. I don't want to read my presentations, so I spend a lot of time thinking about them. On the drive home, I'm doing that presentation in my mind. I'm coming up with what are the questions that I would ask if I was in the audience, trying to make sure I'm ready to answer those questions. I'm fortunate. One of the things I get to present on is engineering ethics, and I try to use case studies. NSPE has been doing. They have a board of ethical review that looks at hypothetical situations that engineers find themselves in, and presents a finding of what they believe is the ethical path for a given situation. And they've been doing that since the 50s. So, and all these are on our website that our members can view. So I like to read those and use those in my presentations on ethics, and ask a lot of what would you do questions. You make the call. If for those back in the days wherever sports, they used to do that show where guys catches a ball nearly out of bounds, and whether he's inbounds or out, and ask people, you make the call, what's the right call? Well, that's what these presentations are. I like them to be interactive. We want the audiences. I heard once that you want the audience's voice in the room as early as you can in your presentation because you want engagement. Presentations aren't one way. They should be two-way. We want questions to come back and we can have a discussion.
Yeah, I agree with that. And not only that, but when you get those kind of questions, you have answers for them, then your presentation gets better because you may be getting questions that perhaps you didn't consider. And then when you get those answers to those, then you just have a stronger presentation overall.
Yeah.
So
and a good answer is, boy, that's a really good question. I'm going to have to do some research and I'll get back to you. I've gotten something out of that. Now that I am learning, and that's great. And you know that you've got an engaged audience when they can ask you questions that you haven't thought about.
Yeah, I fully agree. Do you ever get nervous before a presentation, Britt? And if
Always.
so, how do you deal with your nerves?
Always get nervous before a presentation. And if I don't, I have the worst presentation ever. Nervousness is, it helps you be good. You've got to, there's a point of nervousness that turns into, fear. That's not good. All right. But nervousness, those butterflies in your stomach, those heighten your senses a little bit. It's a little bit of fight or flight kind of thing. And I believe it makes you a better presenter. If you're nervous to the point that you can't put a phrase together, that's when you're crossing into what I would consider fear. All right. And the reality is, they did a poll, and there's a large percentage of the population fear public speaking more than death. And think about that. Standing up in public, they would rather die than stand up in public and speak. I'm not that way. But I say that those people that are doing that have never tried it. You've got to try it try to get in that safe environment, whatever it is, and start off slow and make yourself do it. I had a coworker who public speaking is not their forte, and just last week was asked to speak at one of our local civic organizations on a particular topic. I offered him an out and offered to take it for him if he wanted, and he was adamant that he wanted to do it. He wanted to put himself out there because he understands that he's got to get better at this. So, I attended the presentation and he did awesome. I can tell you he was scared to death. I knew it because I know this particular coworker, but he did a great job. And everybody knew he was nervous, but they were okay with it because he knew the material and he was trying his best.
Yeah, I agree. I've also heard about the issue of some people fearing death more than public speaking. I think the way someone put it is they'd rather be in the casket than the one giving the eulogy.
I want to steal that, Neil. So I don't know where you got it, but I'm stealing that one.
Yeah, nice. So this has been great talking to you, Britt. Thank you for being a guest. How can people get in touch with you?
Well, obviously they can reach me through the website at the NSPE, through our website, which is nspe.org. And but other than that, my email is Britt E. Smith, PE for professional engineer @gmail.com. So Britt E. Smith, PE @gmail.com.
Excellent. Well, everyone, that marks the end of another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson, founder of Teach the Geek, and I'm also the creator of the Teach the Geek to Speak online public speaking course. You can learn more about it at teachthegeek.com. Again, that is teachthegeek.com. Until next time, take care and stay safe. Thanks, Britt.
Thank you.